My humble apologies for interrupting your nonstop listening of Taylor Swift's brand new album, but it is a BYU game day. The Cougars in West Virginia under the lights at LaVell Edwards Stadium, and if BYU learned their lesson last week, they should make quick work of Rich Rod and company.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, executive producer of the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah, and a 14-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident expert and insider here on this podcast, and as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. On today's show, we're going to preview BYU in West Virginia tonight under the lights at LaVell Edwards Stadium. Very much looking forward to being out there at the house that LaVell built, breaking it all down. We'll get into that. We'll also make our picks, Big 12 big picks, what to make of the matchups across the conference, and also some national games as well. We'll get into that, and then we'll finish up today's show as we always do with our insider group Q&A. You guys responded en masse when I called for questions, and we'll get to those later on in today's podcast. It's all brought to you today by our friends over at Mazda. As they like to say, like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned for later for highlights in this week's Moving This Game Forward segment. It's all courtesy of our friends over at Mazda. Move and be moved. All right, BYU, West Virginia, under the lights at the house that LaVell built, as I mentioned. Looking forward to being out there. It's the annual pre-general conference game on a Friday night. And the biggest thing I've got to tell you guys about this game today is BYU needs to have learned their lesson from Colorado and not play with their food and not overlook any opponent, especially the type you have tonight in West Virginia. Yeah, West Virginia is a walking mash unit right now. They're down as many as at least two, as many as three quarterbacks. Could be starting a redshirt freshman in Khalil Wilkins, and that appears to be the case tonight. He will start. And if BYU, what they learned going up against a guy like Caden Salter a week ago, they should be much more prepared to slow a running quarterback, because I fully expect Rich Rodriguez and company to come into this game thinking, all right, the only way we have a chance in this game is to keep the ball on the ground in large doses and find ways to grind up the clock and make this game ugly. That's simply put the only way I think that West Virginia finds a way to gain traction in this matchup. The good news from the BYU side of things is BYU's defense, if there is one thing it is geared towards doing, it is geared towards shutting down a opposing rushing attack. That's why BYU plays so much single high safety. Remember, Tanner Wall usually is the only guy 10 yards plus off the ball, because that's the way this defense is designed. It brings 7 and 8 men into the box and essentially dares you to throw the ball on them and force them out of that alignment. Now, have teams been able to do that? Yes, but Khalil Wilkins, tonight, he's going to have to do that tonight, because I fully expect that Jay Hill and company are going to load that box and dare this young man to beat them with his arm, because they are, I think, absolutely intent on not letting what happened a week ago against Caden Salter happen again. Remember, Caden Salter found a lot of space to run in on BYU, whether it was read options, design QB runs, or him just simply scrambling. He found a lot of green grass at Folsom Field. BYU will be very locked in on making sure that that space does not exist for a young man like Wilkins in this game tonight. The other thing is, BYU has got to go into this matchup looking for a fast start. There cannot, as Kalani Sitake pointed out earlier this week, I don't want us learning lessons by giving up 14 points and then being like, oh, wait, we got to play football now. BYU found a way to wriggle themselves off of the hook last week against Colorado, falling behind 14-0 and looking like they very well may have been landed a knockout punch, speaking of Colorado, had they been able to find another touchdown in that first quarter. They found a way to win that football game, and I know that the coaches have probably been barking at these guys all week long saying, okay, y'all thought you were hot stuff last week. You got punched in the mouth, and you found a way to win that football game, but do not play with your food ever again. Focus on the here and now. Focus in on West Virginia. BYU is a decided favorite. Our friends over at FanDuel have had it as high as a 20-point margin. It's dropped to as low as 18, but it's almost a 3-touchdown deficit in a conference game. They are expecting this to be a blowout. That's what the spread would tell you in this matchup. But the bigger point to be made, I believe, for BYU is It's a lesson in not overlooking anybody in this conference. I was on with Spencer McLaughlin from Locked On College Football yesterday. We posted the clip as well here on Locked On Cougars on YouTube, and he talked about that very thing. This is a topsy-turvy league in the Big 12. Remember last year when the media poll was a thing, Arizona State was picked 16th, dead last in the conference, and actually won the Big 12 a season ago. This is a league that when you think you've got it figured out, it jumps up and bites you in the rear end, and it completely flips it upside down. So the biggest thing for me tonight for BYU is run the ball. Let LJ Martin, no Sione Moa tonight, but let guys like Enoch Nawahine, let them run wild on this Mountaineers defense. It's a decent defense. That's what West Virginia's got to be banking on, is forcing some turnovers if they can in this game. But BYU, they got to take care of the football. They got to run the ball as well as they have all season long. They're still averaging over 200 plus yards a game. Do that again tonight. And so long as you impose your will, as I expect BYU will do to West Virginia, the Cougars should shine in this game. I don't want to see Bear Bachmeier running the ball 15 plus times in this contest. I'll be very blunt about that. In fact, I don't want to see him play the entirety of this game, if I'm being very honest. I'd like to see him get in there, take care of business, make sure that BYU has a healthy lead, and then have the Cougars lift him, rest him up a little bit, and then look forward in his mind to next week against Arizona. That is the ideal scenario in my mind for BYU in this game, but also do not lose focus as a team if and when that happens. The second and third units, they still got to go out there and prove themselves. Jay Hill, Aaron Roderick, Kalani Sitake, they have been very clear that they want to get valuable, what they call valuable reps for their young players in games like this. West Virginia very well may be overmatched, and if BYU can run away with it early, that gives these younger players a chance to play in legit football games, get the valuable reps that lend itself to developing depth, and more importantly, setting up kind of the next generation of BYU football players whenever the guys in front of them age out and move on to whatever's next in life, whether it's the pro ball level or going pro in something else. I look forward to a matchup like this tonight. I always enjoy being at LaVell Edwards Stadium watching games. And I hope that if you guys are out there at LaVell Edwards Stadium, you see me wandering around the concourse, because I usually like to take at least a lap or two around LaVell Edwards Stadium pregame. Say hello. I'd love nothing more than to chat you guys up, but I'm looking forward to this matchup. I think so long as BYU does what they've been doing all season long, and it's been a very steady, plodding style, but also very effective style, I think the Cougars have no problem winning this football game. And I've already said it yesterday on the podcast, reiterate it here. I think the margin tonight, in my mind, BYU 31, West Virginia 13. And I think those 13 points, 10 or so of them come in garbage time when the game is absolutely in hand. We'll see how it all plays out. Let me know what your guys' predictions are in the comments below, whether it's on YouTube, reach out via social media. Let us know what you think. All right, coming up next, though, we are going to be talking about the rest of the Big 12. We call it Big 12 Big Picks. We're looking around the conference, making my picks of who I think is going to win this weekend. We'll also do some national games. There's a couple of ranked matchups in the national sphere. We'll get to all that as we continue on Locked On Cougars right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Mazda. They're moving the game forward segment for those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward, I believe, from this past weekend for BYU, that Isaiah Glasker sack. It was 3rd and 3. Colorado's trying to find a way to tie up the game, and he falls down on the play as they have Caden Salter rolling out, and he gets back up and puts together a 23-yard sack in the end, and it absolutely, I think, changed the entire complexion of that game. What an entirely different outcome it might have been had that play not been made, and that is why Isaiah Glasker wins our Moving the Game Forward segment this week. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning, and just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. It's all courtesy of friends over at Mazda, where they like to say, move and be moved. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at DoorDash. Now, DoorDash has been delivering all season long. It's almost the weekend. It's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by our friends at DoorDash. Just like you win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players deliver when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For BYU this week, the player of the week, in my opinion, is Bear Bachmeier. Career high in rushing, helps BYU grind out a hard-fought 24-21 victory, and looking like he's continuing to ascend to the upper echelons of the Big 12 in terms of overall quarterback play. I think he's absolutely nailing it. And when the pressure was on, he came through, has no hesitation, no delay, and helped BYU get a big win. And that's been watching week after week. The performance is not a fluke. Bear has been unflappable in many respects. He is absolutely on a streak. And just like Bear Bachmeyer delivered for BYU, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays as well with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday that you order, stack it up all season long, and save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak alive, fuel your game day, and do it only with DoorDash. Terms apply. The promo period runs through 11/18. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of you for being with us here on the podcast. I do want to give a special shout out to three amigos of mine who I believe are in town this weekend. I know at least two of them are coming in town. I hope the third is going to be here, and I'm hoping to catch up with them tonight at Lavelle Edwards Stadium. They are the brothers Huckville. Robbie, David, good friends of mine. I've been on many a trip with them to watch other BYU games around the country, but they are here in town. And I hope that Nick Lee, my good buddy, a longtime listener and a good friend who has traveled with us as well, I hope he's in town as well. So shout out to the brothers Huckville and Nick Lee. You guys are my guys, and I hope you guys have a great time out under the lights at the house that Lavelle built tonight. But as always, thank you for your support of the podcast. Please subscribe, rate, review, share with your family and friends, and continue to help us build this audience right here on your original daily podcast, the Locked On Cougars podcast. All right, time now for our Big 12 big picks. Looking around the rest of the league and trying to get a sense for what to expect this weekend across the Big 12. Now, obviously, the only Big 12 game tonight is West Virginia BYU. I've already told you, I'm picking BYU to win it and win it decidedly. I think they should move to 5-0. And the other side of it is West Virginia. They're looking like they're trending really, really down, but they need a bye week, and that finally comes next week. So hopefully they can heal up, and we'll see what happens in the back half of the season for the Mountaineers. On to the other games. I think the game of the weekend, in my opinion, in the Big 12, it's happening in Cincinnati. It's number 14 Iowa State at Cincinnati. Now, Brendan Sorsby has emerged as a really phenomenal quarterback so far this year for the Cincinnati Bearcats, who are 3-1 against what I thought was going to be maybe one of the worst teams in the league. They've been very, very good. They're going up against Rocco Becht and the Iowa State Cyclones, who are ranked 14th. It'll be an interesting game here. It's a 10 a.m. kickoff on ESPN2. And if Cincinnati can hold serve at home, you want to talk about upending a lot of the Big 12 race. A loss to Iowa State at this juncture is going to hurt the conference in terms of the overall national perception, but it wouldn't surprise me either. If I was going, and by the way, when it comes to these picks, I don't really go by the spread. I just pick winners. If it was going by the spread, I would probably pick Cincinnati to cover, but I'm picking Iowa State to squeak it out here. I do think they get the win on the road, but I don't think Cincinnati will hurt themselves in the process. The next game, also a 10 a.m. kickoff, Kansas State at Baylor. Now, Kansas State, did they figure things out last week? Or is just kind of fool's gold with the Wildcats? They're trying to regain some respect, but at the same time, Baylor's doing the exact same thing. Sawyer Robertson has 1,700 passing yards, and somehow Baylor's just sitting at 3-2 on the year. They need a big win. They're 1-1 in Big 12 play, much like Kansas State. They need to get to 2-1 to keep themselves alive in this race. I think Baylor gets the job done, and they'll do so, I think, handily at McLean Stadium. 1 o'clock, Oklahoma State at Arizona. Now, it's all going wrong for Oklahoma State. They have fired the head coach, the defensive coordinator. They showed a little bit of fight last week against Baylor, but I just think Arizona, BYU's next opponent, by the way, they're going to handle business here. I think it might be a little closer than a 20.5 spread if you're looking at that, because that's a pretty incredible margin, much like BYU against West Virginia. That's 18.5. So this is higher right now than what BYU's is. But I do think Oklahoma State, the wheels are about to come off if they have not. I think Arizona gets the win and improves to 4-1. It sets up a pretty tasty matchup for BYU and the Wildcats next week in Tucson. Texas Tech and Houston. If the game earlier I just mentioned, Iowa State and Cincinnati, is the game of the week, the undercard is number 11 Texas Tech at Houston. Houston's undefeated, much like Texas Tech. Tech is coming off a bye week. Baron Morton's supposed to be back in the saddle as Tech's starting quarterback, but is Will Hammond make an appearance in this game? I do think that the Houston Cougars having this game at home gives them some help, but I still think Texas Tech is inevitable. They moved to 5-0, but I think it'll be a very, very entertaining game. That's 5 o'clock on ESPN if you want to watch that ahead of some of the nightcap games that are pretty light overall. Also at 5:30, Colorado at TCU. Now, Colorado, they've played 3 Power 4 opponents, have not won a single one, including BYU last week. TCU, conversely, they're 3-1, but they're 0-1 in Big 12 play after they lost the opener, which they had, it felt like in many respects, at Arizona State last week. Josh Hoover, I think, has been absolutely remarkable this year, but I've got a feeling that Colorado is going to be ready to go in this one. For some reason, against all sanity, give me the Colorado Buffaloes. I don't know what to say. I think Colorado gets off the schneid here. I don't know how to describe it other than it's a gut feeling about Colorado. And then finishing up in the Big 12, Kansas at UCF. Now, UCF has proven to be a lot more plucky than I expected they would be, especially with the rebuilding effort under Scott Frost. Kansas, on the other hand, they should be a whole lot better, it feels like, than they are. They're 3-2, so not bad. They're 1-1 in Big 12 play. I think Kansas gets to 4-2, and I think they roll UCF, even though they're playing in Orlando. I think that's going to be one that's going to be an interesting one to kind of watch play out here, because I'm very curious to see how it all shakes out on that front. But it's a fun game all the same, and we'll see what happens in that contest. Now, on to the national games of note. It's kind of a light week, honestly. There's a lot of teams on bye. BYU's arch rivals, Utah and Utah State, in fact, are on a bye themselves. But you do have, I think, a crazy game. Vanderbilt at Alabama. Remember, Vanderbilt won this game last year at home in Nashville against the Crimson Tide. It was like 35, 36. It was a wild game. And Alabama got a big win last weekend, beating Georgia. They moved to number 10 in the country. I think they're going right back down. Give me Diego Pavia. Give me the Vanderbilt Commodores to improve to 6-0. There's something special about what Clark Lee and the Commodores have built. I think they're going to get the win, even though Alabama's a pretty decided favorite according to the sports books out there. But I'm looking at this. I think Vanderbilt's got their number, and we'll see if I'm wrong about that. And obviously, if you look at my record all season long, I'm still 5 games over 500, but I'm just kind of hovering around that line. They also have a huge game in the Sunshine State as well. Number 3, Miami, at number 18, Florida State. Now, Florida State's an interesting story. Had just a horrendous season a season ago, 2-10. They bounced back with a big season opening win over the aforementioned Alabama Crimson Tide. But number 3, Miami, they looked the part. Like, you want to talk about the U being back, speaking of the U of Miami, they looked like they are intent on asserting themselves as, yes, we are the big dogs in the ACC. If not, we're going to make a run at a national title. Maybe, just maybe, Miami has finally figured out the calculus after 20-plus years kind of wandering around, hoping they could get their swagger back. I'm going to pick Miami to win on the road in Tallahassee. I do think it'll be an absolutely electric game. I'm looking forward to watching this one play out, and I'm very curious to see if Florida State can go toe-to-toe with some of the power that Miami has got in the trenches. That's the biggest thing about Miami this year. There's some really, really good offensive and defensive line play this year, and I'm interested to see if they can hold up against that unrelenting pressure that Miami will put on them, speaking of the Florida State Seminoles. But we'll see how it all shakes out. It's just a very interesting matchup to me, and those are my picks for the week. So let me know if I'm crazy picking Colorado. I don't know why I am, honestly, but it felt like a good time to pick a crazy upset. And Colorado, they were so close last week against BYU. Maybe they get the job done. And I remember when Coach Prime debuted just a couple of seasons back, that was against TCU. It was a wild game. Maybe we'll get another one of those down there in Fort Worth tomorrow evening. All right, coming up next, we will finish up the show, finish up the week here on the podcast. We're not really finishing up the week, so we got a postcast coming be early tomorrow morning, because by the time this game ends for BYU, it's going to be close to midnight, and by the time my radio responsibilities are done, we're looking at maybe another 2 a.m. postcast, baby. Let's go. It's going to be a lot of fun. I love doing it, and I don't mind missing out on some sleep to talk with y'all after these games, but we'll get to your questions. I threw it out to our Locked On Cougars Insider group. They responded in force with a lot of good questions. It's our weekly Q&A mailbag segment. We're getting to it next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Peloton. They're shaping the future of fitness with a brand new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus, which is powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. It is training reimagined. It's built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. And that's part about Peloton is a swivel screen. Peloton is a swivel screen, is a game changer. You can go from running on the Tread Plus to strength training without missing a beat, and you can see it right there in front of you, because you're not missing out on what exercise you're supposed to be. And the personalized class recommendations keep you engaged and get you workouts tailored to fit your vibe and your energy level each week, and quite literally every single day as well. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you have not joined the Locked On Cougars Insider Group, what are you waiting for? Join us today, get the inside scoop on all things BYU, and also be able to ask questions to yours truly that you may have got on your mind. And I love interacting with y'all, and I kind of reserve the right for our Insider Group to have the Q&A reserved for them because they're supporting the show. So join us today. It's a $5 a month charge, but beyond that, you get 2 full weeks when you first sign up before you're charged a single penny. Join us today, get the inside scoop you crave, and also support the podcast along the way. So thank you in advance for being a part of the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. All right, first question out of the chute here comes from Travis. Did you personally, your dad, or your brothers get mistreated by Colorado fans or students? Now, I can tell you this much. I did not have many negative interactions with Colorado fans. In fact, the ones I mostly interacted with were fairly positive. Said, hey, I hope you guys go all the way this season, especially in the aftermath of that win. That could have very easily been sour. Didn't have that experience. Other fans did. On the way over to the stadium, though, there were a few vulgarities issued our way. My younger brother, who was ahead of me, actually, and we were kind of walking like single file up a pretty narrow sidewalk at one point, turned and there was a tailgate going on. He said, he got told he was number one, if you catch my drift. And he responded just with a thumbs up and said, thanks, and went on his merry way. Here's the thing. Fan interactions are one thing. I've been all over the country. I've been to Notre Dame. I've been to Tennessee. I've been to Wisconsin. I've been to some of these biggest and baddest environments in college football that you can imagine. I've been to Nebraska. And here's the deal. Home fans, they're going to treat people the way they're going to treat them. You're just there to enjoy the game. So just move along. But I did not have very many negative interactions. The only real negative interaction I had is if you saw me at the game, I was wearing an Alamo Bowl champion shirt just to troll Colorado fans just a little bit. And there was a trio of inebriated Colorado, I think they were students, who I saw at one point, looked at my shirt and said, I can't believe you're wearing that. And I said, wearing what? The fact that this is legitimate. They're the Alamo Bowl champions, and they kind of rolled their eyes and moved along. That's maybe the most negative interaction I had. Other question from Travis. How does each team decide which color jersey to wear prior to game day? Do you know? Just a fun question. Quite honestly, they're actually decided for BYU months in advance. BYU sits down with their team leadership and asks them, okay, what are we going to wear each game? And they lay it out. Now, traditionally, a home team wears dark colors, but you can change that. BYU's done whiteouts at home, but you kind of have to just declare it ahead of time and let your opponents know, and then they can make the adjustments on their end. Tyson, who are your MVPs on both sides of the ball so far this season for BYU? Well, offensively, it's LJ Martin. He's been everything we've been hoping he could be so far this year. That obviously last week against Colorado, they very much were focused on making sure he didn't gash them. Bear Bachmeier was a beneficiary of that with his career high in rushing. I do think LJ is still the MVP for me so far on the offensive side of the football. Defensively, good question. I am going to give it, it's defensive MVPs. I'm not going to pick between them. It's Jack Kelly and Isaiah Glasker. They're the straws that make stir the drink for BYU, especially on defense. They've been so good, and I think that they are deserving of that. Zach, is it harder for teams to come to Provo and face mountain time zone and elevation for BYU, or to go east to a much lower elevation? Does BYU have an edge in their scheduling? Here's the thing. As I understand it, going west to east actually is harder time zone wise, but elevation, that is no joke. It depends on every single individual player, and it more is a kind of a mind game in many respects with all the training these players do. But elevation is absolutely going higher in elevation. It hurts you versus going lower in elevation. Yeah, you have more oxygen. You should have more oxygenated blood when you go to lower elevations. But traveling west to east is a little tougher. Traveling those time zones versus going east to west, as I understand it. But I don't think traveling time zones is good for anybody, quite honestly. So hopefully that answers your question there. Let's see. Good question here from Caden. Do you think our coaches struggle with scripting our first 10 to 15 plays? All 4 of the opening drives have ended either in a punt or a turnover on downs. Do you think it's due to scripted plays, or do our players just start slow? Here's the deal. I've said it before on this podcast. I'll say it again. Coaches call plays. Players execute said plays. I don't think BYU is scripting the first 10 or so plays, that type of a problem. Execution is lacking. So it's more to the slow start. That's my personal opinion on the matter, Caden. So that explains what I believe on this. Jordan, what do the Cougars need to do better offensively and defensively this game for you to feel like it could be a Big 12 championship contender? Jordan, I'm not going to lie, with the way things look on paper for West Virginia, I'm not sure we're going to see much that would tell me that they are or are not a Big 12 conference contender. Now, starting with Arizona next week and the succeeding 6 games, the 5 games after Arizona, so the 6-game stretch there, that's when we're going to learn a lot about BYU and their Big 12 title hopes, because those are the opponents. Those 6, Arizona, Utah, at Iowa State, off for a bye week, at Texas Tech, home to TCU, at Cincinnati. If BYU goes maybe 4-2, 5-1 in that stretch, they're absolutely a Big 12 title contender. But there's nothing against tonight's game. It's just not one that's going to tell me what you're looking, I think, to get an answer for. Preston, Jake, it's good to hear people talk about visiting Provo and enjoying it, like Mountaineer Paul and Drake. Do you think Provo has or will start to play a role for recruits coming to play for BYU? If it hasn't already, and in fact, I know it has, Provo is a draw for certain people. And it's the mountains. You like that kind of the scenery and that type of stuff. I don't think it's necessarily ever going to be like the number one reason why a kid picks Provo, Utah, or BYU is because of Utah and their the scenery here. But I think it's absolutely a draw. And the one thing BYU needs to play up is a Silicon Slopes thing. Like the fact that you could have a network and have a job right out of college, even if you don't go pro. We hope you go into the NFL. But if you don't, you got a lot of jobs here along the Wasatch Front that you could land at and would be very, very good for you. That's another thing BYU needs to play up about living in Utah. Jeff, if it's a blowout, do we play all our starters for all 4 quarters? I hope not. I think BYU needs to get a little bit of rest in, because remember, they're going to go Arizona, Utah, at Iowa State the next 3 games before they get an off week. That's going to test them, and they've already played some pretty physical games. I think last week against Colorado, what's much more physical than I think any of us expected. Get some rest for these guys, if at all possible. I think be very, very helpful with that regard. Did Colorado expose a flaw in our defense? Will we learn from our mistakes from last game and not commit them again? From Ren. Hopefully I answered that question earlier, Ren, when I talked about the fact that BYU needs to understand what went wrong against Colorado, because what I expect from a program like West Virginia with a young quarterback like Wilkins, you can't allow a quarterback to gash you with his legs like we saw in that game. I do think we need to keep an eye on that in tonight, but I hope that answered your question a little earlier on there, Ren. John Tucker, how about a small update with the women's basketball team? Well, Lee Camard's doing a really decent job on the recruiting front, from what I understand, John. The other thing is I'm looking forward to basketball season getting going. A week from yesterday, Thursday, is the Marriott Center Madness, which the men's and women's team will participate in. I think there's like 8,000 fans are going to get free swag or something like that at the Marriott Center. Should be a fun kickoff event to the basketball season. So that's what I got for you, John. I don't have much more than that. I apologize. I wish I did, but I don't have a ton more on the women's basketball side of things. Here's a good question from Bill. Question for the mailbag. What would Bear need to do this season for him to be considered the greatest freshman quarterback ever at BYU? And who currently holds that title, in your opinion? I have a tie for who I think holds that title right now. And it depends on how many games qualifies for this. That's the other question about this. Because I think a guy like Ty Detmer absolutely qualifies. I think also Zach Wilson qualifies, even though he didn't play a full season. I think Tanner Mangum absolutely qualifies, because Tanner Mangum, his freshman campaign was his best season in a Cougar uniform. So currently, I would say the title actually belongs to Tanner Mangum. That's my personal opinion, because I think he played the most games, had a really, really strong run. But with Bear, if he leads them to like 10 plus wins, there's no problem. Give him the crown. I think that answers that question very, very quickly there. Let's see other good questions here. I'm going to get to the food ones here momentarily. Some good ones across that. Chris, what is your prediction for the BYU Utah game? I'm struggling a bit with this one because I don't think you guys have played anybody other than Texas Tech and the other butts kicked. But I also don't know that BYU's played anybody yet this year. What's your assessment of the likelihood of BYU coming up with a win? I do think it's helpful we're playing at home, but I think all these games come down to the wire usually. Thank you. I have not honestly thought much about it, Chris. I do want BYU to win. I want to see 3 is coming. That's what I'm predicting right now. I'll just say it on the record. I will pick BYU to win that game unless there's some crazy amount of injuries that pop up between now and then. But I have not thought a lot about that. I do think that these 2 teams, there's some unknowns about BYU and Utah. Really, the only team Utah's played so far that's of note is Texas Tech. And you're right. the fourth quarter got away from them. They got absolutely trounced. So it's one to keep an eye on in that respect. Michael, I'd love to hear one of the jokes that Bear is saying in the huddles. Does anyone have the inside scoop there? Michael, I do not have the inside scoop, but I could probably ask somebody on the record, and we'll see what we get for you guys on that. We'll stay on that. Jeffrey, will you let us know when Mountaineers Paul video comes about Provo and how to see it? Yes, it's supposed to be on YouTube, so keep an eye out. Locked on West Virginia. If you don't subscribe to that channel, subscribe to it. I would encourage you guys, if you want a well-rounded feel for the Big 12, check out the various Locked On Big 12 shows. We, I think, have hosts for all of them. Yeah, an Arizona host that literally just announced yesterday, if I recall, 2 days ago. And I think the only program we don't have one for right now is Arizona State. So if you want to stay well-rounded on the Big 12, we got a lot of good shows and a lot of good hosts around the Big 12 right now. Jason, another question here. Who do you think will shine for the Cougars on Friday night? Give your top number one on offense and top number one on defense. Number one on offense, I am going to give that honor to LJ Martin. I think LJ is going to be looking to get some retribution for being shut down in large doses last week. He had a pretty solid game. Just wasn't up to the snuff we'd seen earlier on the season. Defensively, good question. Young quarterback, you're trying to put pressure on him. I want to see somebody come off the edge and have a big game. So let me give somebody let's give a shout out to Hunter Clegg. How about that? Let's see Hunter Clegg break out in a game like this. It'd be fun to see that. Also, Jason asked this: did Colorado have an opening prayer, and do other teams have an opening prayer, or is that unique to BYU and LES? In all of my travels, the only school I've ever heard a pregame prayer for, unless I've missed something, is BYU. The more I say that, I may have heard something to Tennessee when I went down to watch BYU in Tennessee down there. But it's pretty rare that you see that. And BYU, the fact that they do it is a pretty cool thing. Let's see. Another good question here. Can we just replace the AP poll and have AI rank the top 25 from Eric Butler? I'm in favor of it, but it's become kind of a mainstay of what we talk about in college football. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon, Eric. Mark, okay, I'm just going to read this real quick because this, I think, echoes what a lot of you have said to me this week, and I'm going to get it on the record here, and thank you guys publicly for it. He says this: Jake, thanks for your words about being a BYU fan and a member of the church. You are so spot on for both. I've had folks hold up a beer to my lips trying to get me to drink. On the way to the ECU game, a fellow offered me some alcohol. He thought he was funny. It does get tiresome, but you politely refuse and go on, even though some of my non-member relatives continue to joke and poke, quote, fun at me. We just smile and take it. It is a crazy time to be a BYU fan sometimes. But what I said earlier this week, I was speaking from the heart. So thank you. Trust me, there are a lot of you that reached out. And I think I've responded to all those texts, messages, and the like. Thank you for your support. That video, I will be very clear. I was really reticent to post it because I did not want to get roasted on the internet. I didn't feel like something I wanted to get roasted for, but it came off about as well as I probably could have hoped for. And your guys' support of it was very, very appreciated. Ryan has a good question here. I asked a question during the Colorado game, but when is a spot foul called over yardage given from the line of scrimmage? BYU have seen it got a few pass interference, defensive holding calls. They'll only give them a few yards versus the 10 or 15 from the line of scrimmage. Then Colorado gets some of them that moved them further down the field. To be honest, Ryan, I think it's where you are on the field when these fouls occur. Now, routinely, pass interference for years was just 15 yards, but they changed it recently to be a spot foul. If I'm not mistaken, I think if it's within like the first 10 yards, it becomes a spot foul in that circumstance, and that's where the referee tosses the flag. That's the spot of where you get the ball. The automatic first down is still a thing. So I think it's just all dependent on where the fouls occur on the field, and that hopefully answers that question a little bit there. Man, let's see. I think I got all of them here answered. I hope I did. If I did not, I apologize. We did get to the food ones here. Good questions here. Tate, for you, fun one, Jake. Would you rather never have anything sweet ever again, or never have anything savory ever again? Ooh, this is like a Sophie's choice. I will take nothing sweet ever again, and I have got a sugar tooth a mile long. I'm going to say that right. Yeah, I've got a big old addiction to sugar, it feels like, and that's not a bad thing to say, but I love me some sugar. But if I was all sugar all the time or sweet all the time, I think I get tired of that. I do think savory's got more levels to it, so I'd go savory all the time. So yeah, no sweets ever again for me. I would go savory there. And then other question from Kent here. What is your favorite cut of steak or meat, and how do you like it cooked? Now, you're probably expecting me to say something like filet mignon. In fact, I think filet mignon might be the most overrated cut in the beefdom, unless it's done like incredibly well. I've never been super filet mignon fanboy. My favorite cut in steak, ribeye. I'm a big ribeye fan. Now, any steak out there, when it's done the right way, is absolutely delicious. I can tell you, flank steaks all the way to a filet mignon, anything in between, T-bones, tomahawk ribeye. Like, there are so many different cuts, and all of them are delicious. Trust me, I'm an equal opportunity steak enthusiast. But if you want my favorite, when it's done right, it's a ribeye. I've always enjoyed ribeyes for some reason. I do think that is a very clear, I think, decision in my mind. And maybe I'm up in the night about that, but that's what I got for you guys. So I think I got to those questions. If I did not, we're over time, and I apologize. But as always, it's been a lot of fun to answer these questions. And I love the fact you guys bring them from all sides and all angles and let me know what you want to know about. I'm happy to acquiesce to those requests from our Locked On Cougars Insider group. All right, that's going to do it. As always, thank you for your support of the podcast. Enjoy the game tonight, whether you're at LaVell Edwards Stadium or watching wherever you might be. And stay tuned late tonight, early tomorrow morning, probably postcast. A lot of you take time to wind down from these games. It actually helps me wind down to sit down and do those postcast editions of the podcast because I can get what's on my mind about the game off my mind, and it helps me sleep better and understand that, okay, I got that off my chest and we can move along here. So stay tuned for that. Enjoy the game. And once again, I'm predicting BYU 31, West Virginia 13, and we'll see how it all shakes out. And as always, thank you for your support of this podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day, and come back early tomorrow morning and be an everydayer right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.